Okay. Well, many thanks to Teresa once again for extending us her hospitality, and many thanks to Kate for all her organizing. She organized me right into this. She's pretty hard to say no to. Here's why I said yes, probably against my better judgment. Kate and I have had many conversations in which we both, I think, kind of agree we don't really talk enough about our interior lives. And yet, that silent place where we meet the Lord in our hearts, where that intimate relationship with Christ happens, it's the basis of our whole Christian faith. If you, like Father Walter Chiswick, got thrown into the Lubyanka, the prison in Moscow, for 5 years in solitary confinement, you wouldn't have masses or a Bible or anything. You would have what is in here. This is what's just deeply important. So it seems to me important to talk about it, and that's kind of what I'll be thinking about and talking about tonight. So, seasoned Catholics that you are, I don't have to tell you, you are a unique creation of God, and that all of us are called to holiness. But each of us will have a unique path to holiness. God has foreseen that and foreordained it. We don't know it, He does. He calls us to it and reveals us that path to us bit by bit, but we have to be listening to His call and discerning where He's calling us. So my topic tonight is experiencing God and discerning His will, because this has been a hot topic for me in the last 10 years. Being a little older than some of you, it has occurred to me I don't have forever, and I better hurry up on all those great spiritual ideas I've had. So I've been working on this. So what I want to share with you tonight is probably the most useful tool for spiritual discernment I've found, which is the Ignatian Examen of Consciousness. It comes from the beautiful spirituality of St. Ignatius of Loyola, not St. Ignatius of Antioch. He's the 2nd century. This one's the 16th. What I'm going to do tonight is tell you a little bit about St. Ignatius, just give you a sort of quick and dirty rundown on how he sees our relationship, the mechanics of how we work with God. I will go over the Examen and I'll give you a chance to try it out yourselves. And if there's time, and Teresa and Kate will tell me if I'm going over, I will answer the question that everybody asks after they learn to do the Examen, which is, how do I know that inspiration I got actually came from God? And I didn't just make it up. Or worse yet, it came from the evil place. And that's a wonderful question to ask, so I hope we can get there. Okay, so I hope I don't put you to sleep with this. I'm a St. Ignatius fan, so you have to excuse me if I get kind of my fangirl vibes here. 70-year-old Ignatius fangirl, how about that? So St. Ignatius, Spanish aristocrat, early 16th century, started out his adult life as a fiercely loyal soldier. And not very holy. It was wine, women, and song. He had obviously a great capacity for love and devotion, and he practiced it with many people, apparently. But he, in battle, was very badly wounded. A cannonball broke one leg, smashed the other. He underwent 2 gruesome 16th century surgeries where they kept breaking the bones and putting them back together. And then they sent him to the family castle to recuperate. And all they had to read at the family castle was the Bible and saints' lives. No tales of knights there. So he read those and seems to have undergone a very deep conversion, which went on for several years. It led to his development of the spiritual exercises, which are his way of helping people experience their love for Christ and to help them make a choice as to whose banner they're going to fly under. He always thought like a soldier. It's kind of as if he transferred his allegiance from a human commander to the divine one. And soldier that he was, he wanted to know, Lord, what are the orders? I'm out here on the battlefield of life. I could get defeated if I don't know the orders. Tell me what the orders are. His whole spirituality, his beautiful school of spirituality, which has helped thousands and thousands of people over the last hundreds of years, really is all about paying attention and discernment. So let me just quickly explain kind of how St. Ignatius thought about our relationship with God. The first point is, God is not out there, he is here. He is everywhere, laboring to draw us to him. In the things that he allows in our lives or puts on our lives, the conversations, the people we meet, things we accidentally hear, all of those things that happen outside, and also the things that happen within us, the insights, the sudden surges of feeling, memories. One of Ignatius's great insights was that God made us, so he can work with us through our emotions, and we have to pay attention to them and stay awake to notice them. But he was very convinced that the Creator deals with his creations directly. We're experiencing him all the time. I love Kate's little quote that she put on the top from St. Augustine. Looking for God for us is like fish looking for the sea. It's everywhere. God is everywhere around us, and he's communicating with us all the time. We're always experiencing him. So that's the second point that it brings me to, which is we have to pay attention. We have to stay alert and awake. If God is communicating with us in a way that we can understand, we have to wake up and notice that. And the Jesuit phrase for it is finding God in all things, which is not just a pious idea. That's a holy directive. Look for where God is in your daily life. That spat you had with somebody at work, where was God speaking to you in that? That feeling of desolation you had when you turned on the TV, where was God speaking to you in that? What was he asking of you? Where was he calling you to go? That's what we pay attention to every day. And the third point is simply that St. Ignatius saw us in a relationship with God that had a dialogue, a back and a forth, every day, a back and a forth. The way it works is he calls us, he draws us to him, and we either move towards him or we move away. But it's all initiated by God. Holiness is not our project, it's God's project, and we either move towards it or we move away. One of my favorite writers, Father Jacques Philippe, says, if you have an idea about what really holy you looks like, better throw it overboard, because it's probably wrong. You're probably not going to be preaching to the birds or, working in leprosariums or doing what all the other saints did. God knows what most holy you should look like, and he is calling you to it. So I've been doing an awful lot of talking. Does anything I say not make sense that you'd like to have clarified before I go any further? Okay, this is all stuff you maybe knew anyway. Well, let's talk about the Examen. The one thing that St. Ignatius insisted that his Jesuits do twice a day, we're doing good if we do it once, is this Examen. And the idea is, it sounds like an examination of conscience, but really it's a prayer of discernment. Don't worry though, if you have sins, they'll come up. I can speak from experience. So let me go through the steps. This is one of those prayers that's like simple, but not exactly easy, because we're not used to doing this. So let me explain. First, you start with the Prayer of Enlightenment. We just always ask the Holy Spirit to enlighten our minds and to help us see ourselves and our day as God sees it, not just as we've been seeing it in our own little capsule, self-capsule. And once we thank him, then once we pray for enlightenment, then we thank God for the gifts of the day. And this is where the Jesuits talk about this as rummaging through your day to look for the gifts. And it could be anything. It could be, I got to coochie-coo with Teresa Bird's baby in adoration and then send it home. Or a prayer was answered, or I was faced with something difficult and I think I handled it like a good Christian. I'm just grateful I kept my temper and didn't lose it this time. It could be anything. And then we kind of launch into the survey of the day, which is the hard part of this, because what we do is we go back to the beginning of the day and move forward and look at everything that happened in the day on the outside of us, not just what we did, but what came to us and what happened inside of us. It's impossible to remember every single thing, and you don't have to, but oftentimes there are one or two things that kind of float to the surface. Oh yeah, I was really agitated when that happened. What was that about? This is a chance to notice where God is calling you, where he might be present to you, how he might be asking you to notice something about yourself. Kate and I have both agreed, you take your time over this, you spend a little time pondering, it'll float to the surface. And just let it come up to the surface. Don't rush it, and don't assume you know what God is going to say about it. I mean, I've had my latest experience with the Examen, which ended up in confession, was I hadn't forgiven somebody that I should have forgiven 12 years ago, and I thought I had forgiven them. And the little resentment started perking up, and I didn't really notice it, but I noticed it in my Examen when I went over the day. And I was very surprised. God didn't say, and you should have forgiven him. What he said was, no, of course you didn't forgive him. Your heart was wounded. He crushed you. You didn't deal with that. You didn't ask Jesus to heal you. You didn't join your sufferings to him on the cross. You didn't ask for the grace of the conversion. You didn't use the tools of your religion. It's like, oh. Yeah, well, an Examen can kind of be like that. Some of them are sort of really revealing to you, and some of them are just kind of boring, and that's okay. So it takes a little bit of imagination to look into your day and see where God might be calling you, how he might be trying to move your heart, get you to notice something, asking you to behave better, or just wanting you to notice you didn't kind of go in a direction that he was really wanting you to go. And the last step is when you feel you've finished that, we thank God for giving us the grace to see ourselves as he sees us, and we ask him for the grace to do something better tomorrow that maybe we didn't do so well today. It's that simple. The real graces of the Examen come from not doing it once, but from doing it every night, because you begin to see patterns. The Lord has a theme going on with me right now, which is sort of in the nature of, couldn't you rise above that? As in all petty resentments. Yeah. You go to Jesus for truth, you're going to get it. But I want to say something, by the way. I talk a lot about hearing Christ, and I hear the voice of the shepherd in my heart. Not everybody does. In a very informal field survey of 6 people, of which I was one of the participants, this is really bad experimental design. 4 people said yes. Do you hear the voice of the shepherd? Yes, I hear him in my heart, not my ears, my heart. His words come to me. But 2 other people saw images. One of them was an artist. Makes sense. God communicates with us in the way that really works for us. So if you hear somebody talking about they hear God and you don't worry. He's communicating with you. You just maybe haven't figured out how that is happening yet. So I hope you're still awake. I'd like you to try the Examen. I'd advise actually writing it if you can. It has a way of focusing your attention so you don't wander off. Because, and by the way, never try to do this in bed at night. You'll put yourself right to sleep. And anyway, you didn't really want to go through that whole day. So give it a try now. Are there any questions about what I'm asking you to do?
So if you're not doing it at the end of the night when you're getting in bed, when do you do it? Like at the end of the work day, or?
Well, you have to work that. You can do it once a day. You could do it in your lunch hour if that's when you don't have a lot of commotion going on, and just think about the last 24 hours. Okay. But I'm just saying that if you try to lie down and do it, you can sit up in bed and keep the light on, but if you lie down, the day will overtake you before you have a chance to think about it. So this really doesn't have to take longer than 10 minutes, 15. Don't overthink it. Just let it happen, see what happens, if anything. think about your last 24 hours and just see what floats to the surface. So, go ahead, have a shot at it. Okay. So, what struck you about that process? I'm not asking anybody to make a confession, but how was that process? Because it's not the way we usually pray at the end of the day. How did that work for you?
I will tell you, it's surprising how easily distracted I am. It's a matter of seconds, like literally seconds.
You are not unusual. All the other humans are doing it too. Yes, it is hard to keep coming back. Yeah.
I like that it starts with the positive, so that you can draw into, what are the really good things that happened today. I think that's a good way to start.
Did anybody start by saying, oh, nothing happened to me today? Oh, wait, something did happen to me today. That's how mine usually start. Did you learn anything you weren't expecting to? Did something pop up that surprised you? Sister, you look like you're about to say something. So you, okay.
We do afternoon and night. Within night prayer, we do it for 5 minutes. In the afternoon, we also do it for another 10 minutes. And we start with on rising. Do I immediately wake up, responded to the bell, or did I respond to the time for waking up? Did I quickly get myself ready for prayer? Was I late? Was I prompt? And how did the prayer go? From there, okay, after prayer, did I do my duty? Did I hurry up to work? What I need to do? What of my relationship with my sisters? Was I charitable towards my sisters, towards the people I met today? How was my meditation? How did it go? How was my prayers? Did I get distracted? All those questions, just from the beginning, I have to give myself, I did well here, I have to try. Continue like that till afternoon time. Then from afternoon in the night, the whole day, we have to examine the whole day.
So you're used to doing this.
Yes, every day.
You have a checklist. Yeah. Caroline, how about you? You spent some time on it.
And that's just me. It just kind of brought me back to, my thing has always been just the writing, because it's like I used to do it all the time, especially in adoration or just sitting in the church, because that's my quiet space. Now maybe I can carve out more quiet time at home, but I used to do it all the time, and sometimes I'd open it up and I say a journal, but it's more like a prayer journal, because really it's just my conversations with God. And sometimes it's like, I don't have a thing to say, and then all of a sudden I build up, 2 or 3 pages. So that's just kind of what it reminded me. And I know there's some things I need to be working on, and those definitely came out loud and clear.
As they will. And if you do this every night, or at least every other night, you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see patterns.
I will say it's been quite a while, but there was a Jesuit at St. Elizabeth's that did a talk or something, and I like, of course, it's always good to end, with a thank you and everything. But he also said, end your exam with the good. Like we started with the good, but ended with the good, especially if you're doing it in the evening you wake up in the morning, those good thoughts have carried over to your waking hours.
I've found, having been trained to use it as an examination of conscience and having been trained this way to focus on where is God in my day, it stings a lot less. I never feel shamed, and sometimes I'm surprised, like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But because I'm focused on God and His love for me, it doesn't hurt as much. Somehow it is positive. I can't believe it, but I realize that. I don't know how to explain that, but
Because God brings the good out of
yeah, there you go. How about anybody else?
I noticed like just some moments of gratitude for some like just people in my lives and actions that maybe I don't notice during the day, like in the moment, but then later, like, wow, that was like, I'm really glad we had that time together, that moment together, this thing about this person. I really want to like rest in that goodness for a minute. And so I really like that time to spend in gratitude. And then also comparing kind of what's happening within and without, I think, is helpful. How, like, when is that lining up, when is it not?
Yeah, where am I moving towards God? Where am I moving away? Courtney, you were busy writing over there. Did anything come up for you? Did you find it hard?
No, well, yes and no. I like starting with the good and the grateful. I get stuck on 3, the survey of the day, and answering those questions. I mean, as we've talked before, you and I still struggle with how God is speaking to me. And I wrote more than I normally would. I mean, with Caroline saying that, she sits and writes a lot. For anybody who comes in during my adoration hour, like Greg does a lot, I go in, which is fine, but I go in and I close the doors because I just talk out loud. And so when I'm in there by myself, because it's just, I don't know, for me it's just easier to just feel like I guess because I'm loud and I'm a talker anyway. So
you're welcome to do it while I'm there.
No, I totally bother you in your prayer, your silent, quiet prayer. Otherwise, I'm just sitting there quietly, and Steve Kemper catches me sleeping when he comes in at the end of my time. But so, yeah, it's I don't know. Struggling with feeling like, so I think it would be good for me to do it more often, and having these specific questions of, where was God in the day? How did you see Him? But I just still really struggle with that.
Yeah, well, it's not a question we usually ask ourselves, where did I see God today? But He is communicating with us. Have confidence that He will communicate with you in a way that works for you, because He knows who you are and He loves you and He wants you to hear what He has to say, but maybe now is not the time.
You've told me that. I'm asking Him every day. Reveal yourself to me. So I'm still waiting for that. But I will say too, today was a little bit easier, I think, just because we've been dealing with a lot of difficulty with one of our kids in medical stuff, and it's been crazy, and it's been really tumultuous in the house. But the last few days have been a little more calm, and so it was almost like, I can't find anything really bad or tougher that's good. That's really good. Like, I didn't scream and go crazy today, that's really good. So
That is really good.
it is. So maybe that the day was a better day in general. So it'll be interesting, if I do keep myself continuing to do this, other days will reveal other stuff.
It begins to wake you up, so you realize one day, hey, I'm noticing God in the moment. Oh, wow, I don't have to wait till nighttime to wake up. And then in your examen, you think about that moment that you noticed that God was speaking to you and how you responded to that. Concy, what about you back there?
I find that He speaks in the whisper, because, and I think that so many of us look for the, lightning bolts and all this, and I know He does that. I was reminded one time of what happened to St. Paul on the road to Damascus. It was like, how much more can you be hit in the head and knocked down and told, I had a plan
our life is just filled with noise. And here we are in quiet, and yet we're distracted. And just think about when we're just going through our day with everything that's just shouting at us all the time. So to me, the quietness is really needed, and I'm glad that for the most part I get at least a morning, a couple of hours in the morning where I can be quiet and pray. But today in particular, I've been I've been struck with community. And it was just really apparent from the beginning of my morning to Bible study when we had the spiritual question, that I'm just really blessed by a lot of community that supports me in many ways, throughout a lot of my life, especially when I needed it most. And so I don't know why, I haven't figured out yet what's so significant about today in community, but it was like tonight, I almost said again, nah, I'm not going to come, it's just, something that I can do without, even though I would enjoy seeing people and listening to you speak. I was trying to talk myself out of it, and I kept just being pushed and pushed towards community. And so he obviously knows what I need. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it all, other than just be grateful that I have great community support.
Okay, well, you heard his voice and you didn't harden your heart. Yay. That's a thankful thing. Deacon, you do these all the time. You have been doing examens ever since you became a deacon, yes?
Yeah, pretty much. In morning and evening prayer as well. Priests, deacons, religious, I mean, it's not necessarily something that a community adopts, but it's something that is very helpful. And when I'm hearing, Courtney talking about falling asleep, right? I've composed full homilies in my sleep, right?
Who knew?
Does God stop at the end of the day? Not even, right? So you do your evening prayer, you do your examen, and you end your day on a note where you are saturated with the Spirit. And so the Spirit continues with you through the evening and into the next morning, right? Sometimes I'll get up in the middle of the night and I'll start writing stuff down. If I don't...
That's always annoying.
But in the distraction, I mean, we're for good or bad, I mean, we distract ourselves. I mean, it's not necessarily the evil one, right? But when we think about Adam and Eve in the garden, right, we get this illusion that God is not present with them when they're tempted by Satan, right? God comes in later. But that's not the case.
No, he's there.
He's there all the time. So we just distract ourselves from the awareness of that God is there. So the examen is a wonderful prayer, and that's what it is. It's a prayer of what's happening throughout our day and our life and whatnot. So it's a beautiful thing.
Joan, did you get anything out of it? Joan and I work together at Reachmore, and she always tells me the truth. That's why I like talking to Joan.
I was surprised. I don't like to write either. I don't know if you said that. I'm not a journaler at all.
No.
I do not like to journal. I'm trying to do the Robert Barron Lent thing. Sometimes it's like 3 words.
Did you call this room?
I know. It's like, wow.
One day I put a big question mark. I don't know.
This one in particular is asking questions. It's like doing the Bible study thing all over again. So I'm not a journaler, but lots of things flowed out when I was doing this, so I think it's a helpful tool for sure.
Okay. Well, it's okay to say it's not a helpful tool, because this doesn't always work for everybody, or it doesn't work now, but file it away when you've got more time, and it may be helpful later. Anybody else want to add anything?
I was reminded of something to do. Yeah.
into a to-do list.
I'll add one more thing.
Okay.
So as we're praying, right? You know, if you're doing your evening prayer, if you're doing your intentions for those that you want to pray for. I mean, always my list is so long, I forget people, and I forget, not intentionally or whatever, but my prayer continues through the day because I do forget certain things. So then, oh yeah, God, I want to pray for this person. So my morning prayer actually continues throughout the day in praying for them. And that's kind of helpful in the Examen as well, because it makes you aware of that God is present throughout your day.
Right, and the processing that happens in an Examen doesn't stop when you stop the Examen. It does keep going on, and the next day you realize, oh, now I get what he was talking about, or now I see it. It floats to the top. You get it. So it wakes you up. The more you do it, the more natural it seems, and the more it wakes you up. Well, I don't want to bore you to death here, so let me go over really quickly what I have learned from my own spiritual directors, my own experience, and from my reading about how you tell whether or not that's God. And some of them are just real obvious. You will never hear a message that is inconsistent with the magisterium. It always agrees with what the church teaches. And you will never get a message that tells you to violate or abandon your vocation. If you have a vowed vocation, a spouse or deacon or whatever, that just doesn't happen. And one of the most important points to my way of thinking is the presence of God is peace. Or as Father Paul Mackey said to me once, peace is from God, turmoil's from the other place. So if you find turmoil in your Examen, step back and, like Mary, ponder in your heart what's going on there, because it may be something God is asking you to step away from if it's constantly stirring you up. So peace, not turmoil. If you go to Jesus, like I said, you will always get the truth. But here's an interesting thing. I read about this before it actually happened to me, and I realized this is just like what Jesus did when he was walking around down here. Sometimes in your Examen, you'll be pondering something, and you'll ask the Lord a question, and you will get an answer that goes straight to the truth, which can be a little alarming, but at the same time, converts your heart. I struggle a little bit with my daughter's in-laws. You may not know this yet, but when your kids get married, you have to get along with the in-laws because you're going to be sharing grandchildren with them. So everybody has to get along. And sometimes you're the one who's making nice. My daughter's mother-in-law is a good person, but she's very competitive, and she's this wide, and she's very proud of it. So she's always scoping out what I'm having for dinner. So I found myself, ruminating about this, and in my Examen I thought, oh, and I felt the Lord say in my heart, couldn't you rise above that? And at the same time, memories of her husband's funeral came into my mind. And I thought about how crushed she was when he died. And she's not Christian. I don't think she thinks she's going to get to see him again. And she has to reinvent herself at 78. And I'm sitting at her dinner table with my husband. We still get to enjoy our children and our grandchildren together. She's angry. She's suffering. And in that moment that God sent me those memories, I thought, oh, heavens to Betsy, why can't you open up your heart and be patient with her? She's having a tough time. So that's what happens with an Examen. You get the truth, and you get the chance to be healed in that moment. And, of course, the old favorite, look for evidence of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. If what God is giving you, an insight, brings you to a place of peace, joy, love, gentleness, kindness, piety, self-control, and all that stuff, you're on the right track. If it takes you to turmoil, anger, hatred, and alienation, then you're on the wrong track. Here are signs that it's just your imagination and you made it all up. Every time you do the Examen, you have a wonderful experience of God being present to just you. That doesn't happen. I hate to tell you that. See, John of the Cross said, when we want him, he's not there. And when we don't want him, he is there. He's pointing out a basic truth. God is boss. This isn't magic. This is religion. We can't magic God up. Sometimes he's there and sometimes he's not. He's always there, but you don't necessarily get to have an experience of him. So that's something to kind of watch out if you have a dramatic temperament, because he is definitely master of the encounter. If the examen never brings you to a place of recognizing where your soul needs healing, then you're probably not really thinking about your day or really thinking about where God is calling you. Inevitably, you open yourself up to God. He gives you the truth. Something will float to the surface. And if no sins ever float to the surface, it's probably not because you're a saint. Just saying. Okay, signs that it's a temptation. Telling you to forget your vocation, just do what you want. No, that's from the bad place. Making you doubt your faith and talking you out of doing something good. I remember my spiritual director said when she got her degree at Seattle U, she got offered a job at St. James Cathedral doing what you guys do right away. And she went to her spiritual director and said, I can't do this. I'm not experienced enough. He said, that's a temptation. Stop right there. And it's true. I think Satan's best trick is that he teaches you how to cut yourself off at the knees so he doesn't have to do the work. You're wrecking it all by yourself. He's got other things to do. So if he gives you an inspiration, listen to it. And even if you don't feel up to it, just remember the will of God doesn't take me where the grace of God can't keep me. If he wants you to do something, the grace will be there. Another trick he tries is you're doing something good and he distracts you with something even better. So you drop this and rush off to that. And then you think of even something better. So it's the distraction technique, ripping you from one thing to another. Finish the first thing. If it induces a feeling of despair at your sinfulness, that's not God. That's a temptation. Watch out and step back from it. Feelings of acute desolation, watch out, step back from it. Either it could be something you need to stay away from, or it could be that some evil influence wants you to stop doing an examen because it makes you too holy. Stop that. That's basically what I have, guys. That's kind of a long presentation for our thing, but thank you so much for listening. This is something so dear to my heart, and it has changed my interior life so much. I actually feel like I know what God wants me to do. And oh, I'll stop. I'm not going to enthuse anymore. What's your question?
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
I was just going to ask, could you expand your examination to throughout your day? Not to say be scrupulous about it, but in light of the whole idea of ceaselessly praying, could you examine throughout your day?
You mean in the survey part of the examen?
Maybe not the survey. Yeah, I guess it would be.
When you're going, you're thinking about your whole day. You're thinking about your whole day. Is that what you mean?
No, so, like, as I go through my day, just examining, like, I had an encounter with someone, just, like, going through that examen, like, then and there, and thinking about how it went.
Well, of course.
Not to keep you from what you're maybe supposed to be doing, but could you, like, I'm just, I don't know, thinking about, like,
well, here's what happens if you keep up with the examen. This is what I've found anyway. It tends to be a continuous processing. And things happen to you and you respond to them in the moment, hopefully appropriately or not. And you're thinking about that. And then when you sit down and examine and it's a time to ponder how you feel about what happened, where you think God is leading you, and if you're seeing patterns. So you don't have to wait till the evening and then do it however it keeps you awake, because awake is the whole point, to stay awake. Am I answering your question? Because I feel like you look baffled, and I'm not.
I'm just pondering what you said.
Okay, we're pondering.
I'm examining.
Okay, all right. Never use this to torment yourself. It is so not meant for that. I have never found in all of the time I've been doing the examen that it ever leads me to a place of shame or despair. It always feels gentle. I will say the voice of God is firm. He's firm. I mean, he's firm. But in the way that a very loving parent is firm. He's authoritative. We had that conversation. I asked Deacon, you hear the voice of the shepherd? He said, oh yeah, he's firm. I said, yeah, he's firm. Because he just tells you the truth. But it doesn't hurt. Don't be scared of it ever. It's a very gentle process. Okay, the end. That's enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.